now joining me to talk about Swachh Bharat is BJP spokesperson Sambit Patra, Congress spokesperson and MP Abhishek Singhvi, Aam Aadmi Party spokesman Ashutosh, and the former Vice-Chancellor of Jamia Millia Islamia University, Mushirul Hassan. Professor Hassan, let's start with the concept of Swachh Bharat and the mission to make India a clean country by 2019. Even if you may have doubts whether this can actually be achieved, surely the concept and the mission is laudable and something all of us should support.
Well, certainly, I don't necessarily think that this is a gimmick, but I do want to suggest that the UPA too was the one, particularly with Jairam Ramesh, who brought this whole issue to the fore, and it was discussed at various gatherings. And there was, I believe, a blueprint which was already to be placed before Parliament, but for various reasons that couldn't be pushed through. I want to basically suggest, because Gandhi, this has happened on Gandhi's birthday, I want to suggest that Gandhi's concept, which is the underlying concept behind this initiative, I beg your pardon, was to link cleanliness with social reforms. And in a very pronounced manner, he linked this whole exercise against untouchability, which is why I think, as we all know, that in the Bhangi colony, he not only undertook these initiatives.
Can I interrupt you? But I don't want to go into an exegesis of what Gandhi did. But are you suggesting by your answer, both by the fact that you said that this is something UPA2 had attempted, and also by the comparison to Gandhi, where you're going on to suggest that perhaps Mr. Modi hasn't fully understood what Gandhi was doing, that Mr. Modi's initiative doesn't deserve praise? Because that's the impression I get from the way you're formulating your reply.
No, that's not necessarily the conclusion that that you should draw, but I do believe that that it's a long haul, that there are very important problems that are related to this whole question, and unless and until these problems are looked into, I don't think that this project will necessarily be such a spectacular success. But the initiative, if it does sensitize large sections of our society to the importance of sanitation and to the importance of cleanliness, then there's nothing fundamentally or intrinsically wrong with it.
Except for the fact that you're phrasing yourself not positively but very negatively, but that is your prerogative and you have every right to do that. Abhishek Singhvi, no one would deny this is just a first step. No one would deny that there's a long haul, a very, very long haul, before India becomes a clean country. But is it not equally true that the sight of the Prime Minister with a jharu in his hands personally sweeping the streets is not just a welcome one, but for many it's a hope that we will be learning from him, or that at least he's setting an example for the rest of us? I can't recall any other Prime Minister doing anything similar in living memory.
On the contrary, Karan, what you said earlier was the exact, you hit the nail on the head, the word concept, and I emphasize your word concept. It is a virtuous cycle. You can't possibly criticize the concept. It's like saying mother's milk is good. It's like saying remove poverty. But the implementation of that concept is all that matters, Karan. And certainly you don't implement cleanliness drives by mere photo opportunities, showmanship or optics of prime ministers or ministers across the country or senior bureaucrats wielding brooms. That may be symbolic start, but it has to be continuous. It has to be 24/7. And most importantly, Karan, it has to deal with concrete things, which are from the trivial to the large. Just give me half a minute, please.
Is it fair to raise those criticisms on day one? Is it fair to raise those criticisms on day one? I mean, it may well be continuous.
No, on the contrary, I am praising the concept. On the contrary, I am praising the concept. As you said, the concept is unexceptionable. But then carry it through, right through the year in substance, as ground reality. Not merely as photo opportunities.
Well, but surely you need to give the Prime Minister time before you question whether he's carrying it through.
We cannot but support it.
Okay, I like the end. I'm simply questioning whether you should be doubtful of whether he'll carry it through.
No. I'm saying, Karan, that it requires concrete things, infrastructural, sewerage and sanitation.
Okay.
In posh colonies, where you know in Delhi, garbage is not cleared by the MCD for months.
Absolutely.
There is no dustbin. If you want to throw something,
I'll come
these
to
are
those
the
details in a moment's time.
of the things.
I just want to get people's appreciation of the concept before I come to the details that perhaps make it difficult to implement, possibly even vitiate it. But let's stick for a moment at least to the broad concept and the way it's happening. There can be little doubt that India is not a clean country, and there can be little doubt that we as people are a nation of litter bugs. We may have a very highly developed sense of personal hygiene. I put it to you, we have absolutely no sense of public hygiene. Surely Swachh Bharat is precisely the sort of campaign we need to change Indian attitudes.
Karan, probably we are the only party which has openly appreciated what Narendra Modi has initiated as a Prime Minister of this country. But we have also raised certain questions. And my belief is that this is just not only a Swachh Bharat, this is just not only a Clean India campaign, this is much larger and much deeper. And there where my objection lies. My objection is this is an attempt to appropriate Gandhi. The ideology which was born in 1925 and all through its inception wanted to kill the Gandhi as well as the Gandhian ideology also. This is an attempt, and I had said it earlier also today, I want to say again, that on the Madison Square, probably the RSS and its ideology has openly surrendered before Gandhi, that now
should you not be welcoming that rather than pointing it up as a hypocrisy?
No, I'm not saying hypocrisy. I said probably we are the only party in this country which has appreciated openly the act which is started by Narendra Modi.
But you added the rider that this is appropriation of Gandhi.
Of course true, because the ideology and the party which has always said Gandhi Vad, use the word Gandhi Vad. And Gandhi Vad is like Ravan Vad, it's like Meghnath Vad. And the same party and the same ideology, if now wants to appropriate Gandhi and wants to talk about Gandhi, I think they don't have that right.
Samir Patra, let me put this to you. The Prime Minister made a very telling point when he said that the reason why many Western countries are clean is because their citizens neither litter nor will they tolerate other people littering. I put it to you that that is the sort of challenge he faces in India, because we naturally litter and we accept the right of everyone to litter, proof of which was that when in fact you visited the very areas where the so-called clean-up campaign had happened today, and TV channels have been showing it, there was masses of dirty paper cups and soiled plastic sheets that were lying around. The very people who'd come to clean ended up leaving litter behind.
Karan, this is a very important question that you are asking, but today no politics, please, I would say to all other panelists also, since the Prime Minister has addressed this very important issue and he has been very categorical saying that no politics, all parties have contributed towards this, we are taking it further. So praises to all the party. Secondly, and most importantly, as a youngster, I cannot but smile today, and I'm in fact smiling within my heart also, because of the fact that I don't see any reason as to why this whole beautiful concept of spreading cleanliness should be criticized by anyone or any political party. Well, yes, you can put your suggestions. There may be suggestions of betterment and we welcome it. But why criticize it? He was speaking about cleanliness. He has taken up a broom. He has not taken up any kind of gun or any kind of AK-47 rifle. He is not speaking about Swachh Bharat. He is speaking about Swachh Bharat. So at the outset, there is nothing to criticize. We all have to stand united if we want to see our country clean. Thirdly, and very importantly, Karan, more than legislation, the process of creating a Swachh Bharat needs awareness. I mean, legislations can run through pages, but at the end of the day, legislation may not give the desired result. But awareness is what is required, awareness which needs to seep into the grassroots level, and that's what has been started today. And as someone was pointed out, someone was pointing out miles to go. Yes,
keep it a short answer so that others can reply to you, because you made a very good point when you said that the real need of the hour is to create awareness. I want to put that to, in fact, Professor Hassan. Professor Hassan, do you think that changing social attitudes is one of the most difficult things for any politician to do? Most don't even attempt to do it. Here, Mr. Modi is not only attempting it, but is trying to give a personal lead by his behavior. Now, I know you are skeptical, but how much credit do you give him for taking up a challenge where he puts himself in the line of criticism, or at least in the line of people mocking and saying this is just gimmickry? He's prepared to take that.
No, there's no doubt that the initiative is laudable, and there is no doubt that if this social awareness reaches large segments of our population, it would certainly help. But I think there are other fundamental issues which need to be raised on the 2nd of October. And I'm mentioning 2nd of October because that is the day on which this Abhiyan has been launched. And those are issues of ahimsa. Those are issues of Hindu-Muslim unity. Those are issues of social equity. I would, while welcoming this new project, I would have liked the Prime Minister to at least symbolically draw the attention of the nation to these problems.
Can I interrupt?
Because sanitation and cleanliness...
Are you suggesting that...
Let me just finish.
I just want to ask you one question. Are you saying that a campaign for cleanliness is not as important as a campaign either for Hindu-Muslim unity or a campaign of Hinsa? Are you saying that...
I'm not. There has to be a more holistic project. A project which would obviously include cleanliness and sanitation and so on and so forth. But the Prime Minister of the country, if he is sensitive to the ground realities of our society, would also like to underline time and time again and use such opportunities, the 2nd of October or the 14th of November or the 26th of January, underline these very important problems because the question of cleanliness is related to economic
all right, I take your point. Let me bring in someone else. I accept your point. In your eyes, there are other things that are as important. You'd like to see him make some reference to them, and that is perfectly a correct point of view if that is your point of view. On the other hand, the Prime Minister chose to emphasize one thing, and the one thing he chose to emphasize today is cleanliness, and he had a very telling point to make, Abhishek Singhvi, which is that if people devote just 100 hours a year, as he said, this is just 2 hours a week, they can make an enormous difference. Now, do you see that as a way of awakening people to the fact that just a little bit of effort can make a substantial change? Or do you think this is just gimmickry and playing with words?
You know, it's possible to be a little bit of both. First of all, the concept is not at all objectionable. It's a great idea, and certainly how can you object to the fact that 2 hours a week will keep the country clean? But the fanfare with which is done, the fact that ministers going to their constituencies are not going to keep India clean, the fact that for every minister who wields the broom there is a mela watching him, the fact that work stops for this mela are also realities. So there is clearly gimmickry in it. Now the real point, Karan, is that despite the gimmickry, I am prepared to give full marks if you carry this forward for the whole year, provide the dustbins, have the garbage cleaned in the colonies, have the sewerage and the sanitation systems fixed, tell us how you will get, remember this is supposed to be 1.x lakhs, 7 lakhs or crore rupees, 1.7 lakh crore rupees including rural and urban Bharat. Where that money is coming from, the last budget doesn't talk about it really. The next budget is yet to come. If we go to those details, then it becomes less gimmickry, more sincere, more honest. And I would be the first to support it. I'm already supporting the concept. But I would not be drawn away into hysterics by this great, series of showmanships also, which go along with it. And unfortunately, I think both is happening.
Let's take up the points made in a very sincere way, both by Professor Hassan and by Abhishek Singhvi, because what they're saying is that if this is going to be meaningful, there has to be a systemic set of changes behind it. Let me put an example to you. What is achieved if people are asked to sweep the street outside their mohalla or their locality? What happens to what they sweep? Where does it go? At the moment, that big question isn't being answered. Because what you have at the moment in Delhi, and I'm sure other Indian cities are the same, you have dumps beside each locality where everyone goes and dumps their malba and their garbage, and there it stays, and it just becomes a little mountain. Do we not need a system whereby the municipality or the corporation on a daily basis, at fixed times on fixed days, goes to each locality, picks up the dirt and takes it away, so that everyone knows when it's going to happen and is ready for it? That hasn't happened.
See, as a concept, I said all praise. But the point is, this is incomplete concept for the simple reason, because if we are starting Clean India campaign Are we talking about the Safai Karmacharis? Are we talking about their social status? Are we talking about the economic status? The way they are exploited, the way the whole campaign doesn't talk about it and doesn't even think about it. So just cleaning and the sweeping is important. But there are much deeper things, because those Safai Karmacharis who are getting into the main hole and cleaning it up and dying also, there's no thought about it. And those Safai Karmacharis who have to pay, who sign on a 10,000 slip and paid only 4,000. There's no word from the government on that question. So it needs a proper social reform and the social consciousness, so that the Dalits and the Safai Karmacharis should be given the social status and the respect which they deserve. Unfortunately, Clean India campaign doesn't talk about it.
You know, Sambit Patra, what in fact the other three are pointing towards is this. Changing social attitudes is a commendable task for the Prime Minister to take on, and many are prepared to applaud him for doing it, because it's not something politicians do. But if that's all that's going to happen, and so far that is the indication, then it's woefully short. You need to set up a system, first of all, so that the garbage people clear from the front of their houses gets picked up and taken. Otherwise, all that's happening is you're sweeping it from one end of the road to the other end of the road, leaving it there. Secondly, you need to approach the whole question about Safai Karmacharis. Their status needs to be looked at. You have to ensure that those who clean and do the cleaning for you aren't considered the lowest of the low. That's again something the Prime Minister needs to tackle. He needs to tackle it by ensuring that the caste linkages are broken. He needs to tackle it by ensuring that they're paid properly, so that there is a certain reward that is sufficient for the job they do, which is horrific. Without that, this looks to people as if it's not a photo opportunity, but a very ill thought out, though commendable start.
Karan, I would say 2 points. First and foremost, as Professor, the Vice Chancellor of JNU, I think, was pointing out before me, that there's miles to go before we really reach the point. And I agree to the fact that, yes, there are miles to go. Lots of distance has to be covered. But the first step has been taken. If we keep on thinking about what will happen and how do we reach the destiny, and we never put a baby step forward, how do we reach the final destiny? And today the step has been taken.
Can I interrupt you, Sambit?
Yes.
You know, as you're speaking, there is footage on our screens of enthusiastic young girls and students sweeping a pavement. But you can quite clearly see that what they're doing with their jharu is to sweep something from the left to the right, and there it lies.
I understand.
Now,
I'm answering that.
What purpose is achieved by that sort of act? It certainly is drawing attention to the need to be clean, and I commend the Prime Minister. But if you don't have a system of picking up what you sweep, then you're simply pushing the problem from one end of the road to the other.
Karan, as I was telling you, it is just the beginning. And the Prime Minister reiterated in the speech that we have to move ahead. We have to put systems into place. Well, yes, there are lots of systems in place, not because only of our government, but the previous governments also have worked into it, the Prime Minister said. But we have to do a lot. And a beginning has to be there. And today is the beginning. We cannot judge what is going to happen after years just by seeing the beginning. The beginning is a fantastic one, and we should laud the beginning today.
Okay.
Today we are discussing the whole day about Swachhata. Not only today, since 3 days we are discussing about cleanliness. I believe this in itself is an achievement, because the country is discussing about something which was not a discussed topic oft. Secondly, and most important, the basic problem, Karan, is, I will tell you what is happening is, if the Prime Minister would have diluted the issue, he would have taken up the Hindu-Muslim cause, he would have taken up the caste cause, he would have taken up the municipal corporation cause, he would have taken up the disposal cause, then the basic essence of the awareness of cleanliness would have been lost somewhere in that whole diluted form.
Let me bring in Professor Hassan and put this to Professor Hassan. If the Prime Minister is sincere about drawing attention to public habits of cleanliness or lack of cleanliness, do you think he should have actually also spoken out about the Indian habit of spitting and peeing in public? We seem to do it as a nation without a second thought. We don't care where we stop and pee, we don't care where we stop and spit. And that perhaps is even more off-putting than the garbage that we deliberately leave lying on the roadside. Yet that is an aspect where the Prime Minister was silent. Do you think he should have, to be consistent, spoken about that too?
Yes, but I mean, I'm not in the business of issuing testimonials to the Prime Minister of India, but I do want to come back to the points that I hinted at earlier, which is that this whole campaign is likely to be short-lived, because the necessary blueprint for addressing the dynamics of this whole process of cleaning has not been prepared, I suspect. Secondly, and I want to insist on that point, that reducing economic disparities in our society would take care of many of these problems, including the problem of sanitation. And I don't think that you can de-link it from poverty. I don't think you can de-link it from the plight of our people in the rural areas who have no access to water, have no access to nothing. And my fear is that this project would maybe be a success in the urban areas, but its impact will not be felt in the rural areas where it is needed most.
Let me take your point and put it to the others. You're making a very telling point. I'm going to perhaps put a controversial spin on it and put it to Abhishek Singhvi. What you're really hearing from Professor Hassan is that people living in poverty in poor areas can't afford to be publicly clean. Their living conditions and the quantity of money they have to spend and the time and effort they have ensures that they have to carry on living the way they are. And therefore, if you really want to concentrate on improving public hygiene, you have to first boost the economy and ensure that people have jobs and they are well paid. When their standards of living go up, public hygiene and public cleanliness will automatically improve. As a politician first, Abhishek Singhvi, do you accept that line of argument or do you find it a little difficult to swallow?
Frankly, I don't think Professor Hassan said that quite fully. I think what he means is, or what I understood him to mean is, that the poor certainly would like to be clean, but they don't even have the facilities to be clean. You have not facilitated cleanliness because there is a... No, not only poor. Yeah, that's... Well, yes, in a sense, yes.
Because there
is no sewerage line running outside their homes. No. One is that they are poor. The other is that there is no infrastructure in the poor areas of India. There is no sewerage line. You know, you can be poor, but there could be a infrastructure in the road outside.
People can't afford black bags to put their garbage out cleanly on the roadside. That's the first point he's making. People who live in poverty have to live in a certain way because the constraints of the economic life they lead impose conditions on them. That's the point he's making, and I'm saying, do you accept it?
Karan, can I come in over here?
Obviously, it has. Can I just wait? First point, there is undoubtedly true that the poor will focus first on survival and then on cleanliness. Secondly, the poor don't have the supporting infrastructure even if they want to be clean, because the poor by definition live in areas where there is no infrastructure. Thirdly, disparity, but more than disparity, the whole scenario of 20 things which have to be done as supporting items has not been spelled out by the Prime Minister.
You made that point earlier.
That's the objection I have.
You made that point earlier, but
he's made the idea, but he hasn't given the details.
Professor Hassan wasn't making a heartless comment. He was actually making a very truthful one, which is that if you do not have the means to ensure cleanliness because it costs money to do it, then you will end up living in poverty. And what he's really saying is, if you want to improve the public hygiene, improve the income levels and the job guarantees for the poor, tackle it through the economic improvement rather than simply exhorting them to be clean and asking them to sweep the streets. You need to improve their livings first.
Karan, I totally disagree with what the professor has said, and there is a class bias in this, because it has nothing to do with the economic constraint, it has nothing to do with anything else. It is just a matter of attitude. I had seen people in Delhi moving in the BMW cars, stopping at the red light and opening the doors and spitting right there. How will you define this? And people so it has nothing to do with the poverty. Yes, poverty is one of the constraints. The people don't have the money to sweep and clean things. But what about those people? You go to the big apartments. People are leaving things on. They're peeling out things and just leaving on the roads. So it has nothing to do with the economic status.
You know, you get the feeling at the end of the day, Sambit Patra, that the problem is not entirely one to do with poverty or wealth. It's not entirely to do with facility or lack of facility. It's not entirely to do with what the government does or doesn't do. It's to do with us as people. At the end of the day, if our cities are dirty, it's largely because we're quite happy to live amidst dirt.
Karan, I'm humored. I'm humored because the kind of pessimism I am seeing with the cleanliness thing is absolutely appalling. I mean, we should all have been optimistic. Why to say that this will not reach a conclusive end because Indians do not love cleanliness? No, I believe Indians love cleanliness. All we have to do is we have to drive some kind of awareness. We have to work together to see to it that India is a clean
your own Prime Minister made it clear that in fact Indians do not love public cleanliness. He made that point when he said the difference between Western cities and Indian cities is that they will not tolerate litter. We do.
I'm coming to that, Karan. But I believe if Abhishek Manu Singhvi, my good friend from Congress, is saying that people are poor, poverty has to be eliminated, there are no sewers in front of the people home, and that's the reason as to why they're not clean, then probably Congress has more to answer than Mr. Narendra Modi has to answer. And definitely I agree, a holistic measure has to be taken for every issue. Why only cleanliness? For health also, economic condition has to be good. For economy to move ahead, cleanliness has to be there. So there's a holistic way in which life moves forward, and that is the reason as to why governments are in place. Governments do not isolate problems and see them in isolation. It is always a holistic approach, and that's what we are doing.
It's very interesting that even on a subject like public hygiene and cleanliness, on which as a concept we all entirely agree, when it comes to a discussion we manage to find interesting differences between ourselves, and that in a sense makes us argumentative Indians, as Amartya Sen said. It also proves that this is an issue on which the Indian people feel strongly, differ greatly, but at the end of the day probably want some solution. And the Prime Minister, even if you don't agree entirely with what he's doing, has drawn attention to an issue that we all accept is an issue of deep concern. My thanks to all four of my guests for joining me for what was undoubtedly an inconclusive discussion, but nonetheless a very interesting